If you want to survive, you either a civilian or a gangster. There ain't no in between. Stay in your lane, all in or all out. If you get distracted, you did.
Looking in the mirror is something we were all too familiar with in Power. It serves as a visual metaphor for self-reflection, but in the context of the drug game and for our characters at this moment in time, it was a reflection about power, control, and freedom. What Effie wrote on a card earlier in the season was freedom, but she was a long way away from what she'd been working towards as she found herself in an orange jumpsuit at the MCC, escorted by the same prison guard that once escorted Tasha St. Patrick in season 1. All of the Tejadas, Monet, Lauren, and Braden, they were all examining their own identity, assessing their actions, motivations, and the choices that they've made as well as the choices that they were about to make. They've all made decisions that they're not proud of, and they were about to make further decisions that would change the course of Power Book 2 Ghost, and some of these characters really were about to make some savage moves. But we can even take it back all the way to episode 1 when it comes to Tariq looking at his self-reflection and where Effie was standing right behind, and so the clues were already there. Tariq better watch his back when it comes to Effie, and it really did come full circle in episode 10. Effie betrayed him yet again, along with the Tejadas, but he did bag a crucial ally in Obi, and if Braden wasn't with the smoke before, he certainly is now. But he can't ride out a war from the back of a college classroom, and neither is Drew an NBA housewife, and Diana definitely isn't a college chick. They're drug dealers, and so I think it's time to say goodbye to Stansfield in season 4, a season which is going to be all about revenge. Revenge is exactly what was on Tariq's mind as he woke up in hospital with Braden after being knocked out by Tasha in episode 9. Nothing was making sense to Tariq at this moment in time, because at this point in the timeline, even we as the audience were thinking the same as Tariq. Monet gave Tommy Tasha's location, but he couldn't figure out how and why, so all he wanted to do was find Tasha, make sure she was okay, and dead both Tommy and Monet. But Braden made him see sense. Lauren was about to testify and Effie was in custody, and if either flipped, they were fucked. This was also the morning after Braden caught his first body, Lucas Weston, but neither of them had time to process anything. They had to deal with the issues at hand. With Tariq, he goes to visit a familiar face, Egan, and it's always nice to see familiar faces from Power, but Tariq wasn't playing games. He wanted to find Tommy, and with his hand on his gun, he goes looking, but nobody was here apart from Egan and a pile of boxes, and it does seem like she was in the process of a house move, possibly moving to Chicago to be closer to Tommy, JP, and D-Mac, which does make sense because there's nothing left for her in New York. Now, something I made reference to in episode 9 was how Tariq didn't take a sip of alcohol when Davis poured him a drink, and the same could be said in this scene with Kate. He refused, and I do think the writers love leaving breadcrumbs to revisit in later seasons, and this is something we definitely should be paying close attention to, especially considering Tariq knows what alcohol did to Ghost.
Nah, I really just don't drink. You know, growing up, I saw how it affected my father and made him lose control.
Now back to Tariq St. Patrick and Egan. She tells him that this woman in red hair named Monet came and gave a letter to give to Tommy. This was a letter that Sax left for Monet Tejada, which also had Tasha's location, but Kane wasn't to know that, although what she does know is, you never want to get on the wrong side of Tommy. With Monet Tejada, she knew she had to make a move to regain control, and the operation and the kids go hand in hand. Get control over the drug business means you get control over the kids, and so we saw her making a move with Nomar. Now this was the moment we were all waiting for, especially considering Mecca was Nomar's fiancé, who happened to have been killed by Monet, but she was here with a proposition. Wall Street was done. The Ivy League operation was on hold because of Effie's arrest, which Nomar didn't know by the way, because Obi was stalling her for Tariq. But Monet told Nomar she can't trust Tariq St. Patrick, and only a street operation was bringing in money, because she finessed the Russians, took Kai out, and she got rid of the Castillos, and the solution to her problems was standing right in front of her. However, before they could move forward, there was a small matter of Mecca to discuss. Although she didn't directly say she killed Mecca, Monet did say she'd killed to protect her family, and they shouldn't let Mecca get in the way of business. But she did reveal Mecca kept Monet a secret, and with her being in the dark, it left her feeling vulnerable, and she can't afford that, which is something they both have in common. This is also where she said she can't tolerate deception, and she cut Obi, a power move, something we were familiar with when it came to Mecca. Now with law enforcement, they said Lucas Weston's death was classed as a suicide, although they definitely know better, but they just couldn't prove it. But their targets at this moment in time were Effie and Diana. They needed Lauren to testify against Effie, and they were hoping to charge Diana with a RICO and have a flip on the rest of the drug organization. But Jenny doesn't realize how much she's just damaged her relationship with Lauren through lies and manipulation. On Lucas Weston's death being classed as a suicide, later in the episode we had Braden visit Kiki, who said she was going back home to Columbus, but she also questioned Braden. She said the suicide note didn't sound anything like Lucas, and she told Braden to get out of there because look at what he was becoming. And just have a look at what Braden is becoming. His face turned, and Kiki was definitely scared. Braden, while catching his first body, is definitely beginning to change him. Now this was the moment where Tariq, Braden and the Tejada kids realized who their new boss was. Monet was back in control, but more importantly, she wanted a word with Tariq. Now there was a lot of confusion and deception in episode 10, and that's largely thanks to Cooper Saxe causing absolute mayhem from beyond his grave. Monet had doubts around Tariq and she thought Tariq told her kids that she had Lorenzo killed. Meanwhile, Tariq at this moment in time thought Monet was behind the leak of Tasha's location. Monet also made it clear Effie and Lauren couldn't talk, and just as Tariq was about to pull the gun on Monet, Obi steps in. Obi's family received their green cards, and again, this is something we can't overlook. Tariq needs allies, especially after the ending of season 3, and Obi and his family from Nigeria could very well be a part of Tariq's organization in season 4. Although he still wanted to smoke Monet, Tommy was on hand to stop him in his tracks. Tariq was someone who wasn't playing games, and we all know what he's done to protect his mother before, and he said he'll use his gun if he doesn't find out what happened to Tasha. A flashback to episode 9 shows the aftermath of Tariq being knocked out cold by Tasha, and we all know how big of a heart Tommy has when it comes to family, and it definitely showed in this scene. Although hanging over this relationship was Tasha's betrayal. Although Tasha told Tommy that she saved his life on more than one occasion, because she killed Lakeisha to save them all, not just Tariq. She also told him that their feud had to end, otherwise they were going to end up in the grave right next to Raina and Ghost, and Tommy thought shit. He didn't want to lose any more of his family. He wished he could just smoke a blunt with Tasha just like the good old days. Tommy also told Tasha about JP and D-Mac, and I really wouldn't be surprised if they all united at some point in the Power universe, but he did have to scramble out of there because law enforcement were on their way. Now back to Tommy and Tariq. He warns Tariq if he puts Monet in the ground, then he's going to set up Tasha, Yasmin and Grandma Estelle to be killed, and he had to rethink his strategy. At this moment in time, he had no allies, no plan for war, and he had to rethink his beef with Monet, because he definitely can't ride out a war from the back of his college classroom. Ghost tried to live a double life, and look how that turned out for him.
I know you can't ride one out from the back of a fucking college classroom. Your father tried to ride one out from between two worlds. That's what fucked him up.
This isn't the first time Tommy was giving him a lesson in the game. He once told Tariq, "Did you fucking feel that? Every moment in your life, if you're not pushing, you're falling." And this time he told Tariq, "Pick a life. He's either a civilian or a gangster," which is the moment where Tariq realized he was all in, but also because he has nothing to go back to, especially because the trust fund is now gone. But he did ask for Tommy's help, although Tommy told him this wasn't his war. In New York he's already dead, but before he left he told Tariq, "Be smart." Now speaking of Tariq being all in, there's always differing opinions when it comes to the Tejadas. Drew wanted to live a normal life, Diana wanted to go college and hustle, but in season 3 she made it clear how she wanted out of the game, and also out of New York. But Kane is someone who's been all in since day one. He's accepted the fact that they're drug dealers, that's the family business and that's who they are, which is another reason why I don't believe anybody will be going back to Stansfield in season 4. This is also where we first heard about the plans Diana and Drew were putting into motion. They said they'll never see them coming, and this is in regards to having Monet and Tariq taken off the chessboard, which we're going to get to later on. Now with the Westons, they had no time to grieve the loss of Lucas Weston, or even think about Weston Holdings, as Monet and Kane came to collect. They took a painting, and Kane also takes Trace's watch, something I'm going to come to in just a moment. But outside, Monet tells Kane he's pussy whipped because she recognizes how much of a threat Effie is, but Kane doesn't, and she's actually right. Effie's all about herself, which is why she put the hit out on Effie, something Kane did warn her of. But this is something which I wish we got more of Tariq in season 2, which was in jail. I really do think they missed an opportunity for Tariq to get roughed up and learn how to throw his hands. But I mean, fair play to Effie, she did hold her ground. Now Davis told Tariq the same thing Monet told Kane. Effie and Lauren were his bitches, and they had to go. And only now does Tariq realize killing leads to more problems, but it's too late. They also had other issues to deal with. They caught Davis handing a note to Diana, and if they were all going to go down, Davis was going to go down with them. So the plan was to give Lauren an incentive to recant, and making sure Effie doesn't talk, while Davis uses Tate's influence. These are two characters who aren't exactly seeing eye to eye at this moment in time, but they did have to work together, more so because Tariq needed something from Effie, the picture of Noma's daughter. But Effie says she's already found Noma's daughter, and he won't be getting any information unless he gets her out. With regards to Lauren, Tariq told Braden and Kane they needed to work the angle of her parents, who were back in town, because Lauren needed to feel like her snitching would be a bigger danger to her life than if she didn't. But notice a little Easter egg while Kane continued to poke Braden about his family watch. Braden telling Kane he'll chop his hand off was a callback to episode 1 when Noma chopped off this woman's hand to get a ring back, so maybe just something to keep an eye on, especially because of this impending war. Kane and Braden are definitely going to be at odds. Now Tariq convinces Lauren to meet up where Kane and Braden play their card, but Lauren also wants reassurances from Effie before she recants, and she gives Jenny no choice. She tells her she wants to talk to Effie or she won't testify. Lauren also wanted to make sure that this beef was over between them, because last few months have definitely been hard for Lauren, But Effie questioned how have the last few months been hard. There are those of them who grow up being dealt a bad hand. For example, being at the back of the classroom. Lauren had every privilege that Effie didn't, and when she threatened Effie's future, it was all about business, it was never personal. But if she gets on the stand and she snitches, it would get personal, although the power around this table had done a complete 360. Lauren held the power at this moment in time, and if she wanted to burn Effie, she could have. But what was stopping her was Kane threatening her parents. So we saw Lauren burning Jenny Sullivan in front of a jury, telling them that she was forced into the statement, because Jenny made her believe Effie was behind the attempted murder. Meanwhile, Davis was also handling his end with Rashad Tate. But someone who was listening to this conversation was Tate's new fiancé. As Davis warned Tate he's got a bullet coming his way because of how he burned Weston Holdings. He told him to get the charges against Diana to harder dropped, and we all know Tate. He'll do anything for a bit of cash, especially because money for him can equal power. Unfortunately, the consequences of this was his relationship with Harper is completely over, and I don't think he's going to be lucky for the 4th time. So with Tate helping Davis and Lauren burning Jenny Sullivan, Medina pulls the plug on the RICO, and Jenny and Blanca Rodriguez's case is over. Or maybe not. Later in episode 10, Cooper Saxe was still making moves from beyond his grave. This time we saw Paz Valdez return with an envelope that Saxe had left for Junior, but it wasn't a letter, it was a USB. Now I have raised the point about how Powerbook 2 Ghosts have been focusing on their watches in recent seasons, and Saxe did mention this watch was a gift. Whether this was a recording device and whether he has a dangerous conversation or two recorded, who knows? Who knows with Cooper Saxe? But one thing's for sure, whatever's on this USB will put Junior on the hunt for Tariq St. Patrick in season 4. In contrast to the RICO, something which is definitely over for the time being is Tariq and Lauren's relationship, and we see her and her parents leave town, and who knows if she'll be back. But as we all know in Power, if you're not dead, there's always a chance you can come back. With Effie, she was free, and as promised she gave Tariq the details about Nomar's daughter, Anya Covington, who goes NYU, and it seems like Nomar kept their lives completely separate. But this conversation was really intriguing for another reason, because it was clear from episode 9 Effie still had feelings for Tariq, not Kane, and she still wanted a future with Tariq St. Patrick. She went back to the conversation in Milan where they said they wanted to build a life together and get out of the game, but Tariq couldn't trust Effie, and rightly so. But I don't think he realized what her next move was going to be, as they both go their separate ways, but she did hint she was going to find her own way like she always does. Now this team that was working so closely together at the beginning of season 3 was crumbling, and Braden was next. He recognized how him being in the game ruins people's lives, but it was too late. Regardless of what he said and how he was leaving the game, we all knew something would pull him back in. But at this moment in time, he left Tariq with a bag, and now Tariq was on his own. On top of being on his own, Diana was about to come in and make one of the most savage plays yet, which goes back to Drew and Diana saying nobody's going to see them coming. Diana told Tariq she wanted Monet gone, which she definitely did at the time, and so did Tariq, because he believed Monet leaked Tasha's location, not knowing that the person who leaked this info was sitting right in front of him. Diana was playing Tariq not just to get rid of Monet, but also Tariq himself, and honestly Diana definitely has to go in season 4, but the plan this snake put in motion really was savage. She told Tariq she was going to go over to Monet's and tell her she was ready to talk to Drew at the penthouse, but while they were driving out he'd be waiting there to put 2 through the window and kill Monet, while Diana would tell Kane she never saw the killer's face. Unfortunately for Diana, there were 2 moments which ruined her plan. The first was a conversation with Monet where she finally said sorry, something we've never heard before. She was genuinely sorry to Diana, although she wasn't sorry for the tough love that she's had to show, especially towards Diana because she loves Diana, and it was also because she had to raise her to be tough in a man's world. Also because this wasn't the life she wanted. Dealing was Lorenzo's hustle, and this is the moment Diana realized she made a mistake, but it was too late. Although it wasn't Tariq who came all guns blazing, it was Tasha St. Patrick. As Monet laid in hospital in critical condition, Diana realized she sacrificed herself to save her, similar to how Lorenzo pushed Kane out of the way earlier in the season. Now when Kane asked did she see who did this, she said Tariq St. Patrick, and we could all see the anger in Kane's eyes as Drew told him Tariq had to go. But this wasn't the original plan. Tasha fucked the plan up. 4 days ago Drew and Diana realized it was Monet or them, and if they were going to do this then they had to cover their tracks. Their original plan was that Tariq would kill Monet and Kane would kill Tariq, but they needed to give Tariq an incentive to kill Monet, which is of course Diana dressing as Monet and giving the location to K. Egan, which was passed to Tommy, and that was the incentive. They knew Tariq would want Monet's blood if he believed Monet leaked Tasha's location, and so that was the incentive. Now while Monet was in hospital, Tariq went to see Tasha, who told him Monet was her mark, not his. Unfortunately, this was where he had to break the news to her that his trust fund was lost in the Weston Holdings Ponzi scheme. But he still wanted money. He wanted that power that makes you literally untouchable, that shit that Nomar has. But this is something that Ghost tried to do as well, and this is where Tasha had Ghost back. He may have been a lot of things, but he definitely wasn't stupid. Now Tasha knows Tariq better than anybody else, and she knows he was never going to stop, so she tells him with Monet out the way, it's a power vacuum. and he can take advantage of this power vacuum by getting close to Nomar, learning what she knows, and then taking what she has, but it definitely was a dangerous play. So Tariq was here to take advantage of the power vacuum. He said he wanted to work alongside Nomar, elevate his game in New York, but there were differing opinions on who hit Monet, and out came the Tejadas. But just before Kane could pull the trigger on Tariq, he said Anya Covington, the name of Nomar's daughter. He said he had people watching her, but little did he know, Effie had already given that info to Nomar. Another stab in the back from Effie.
This bitch.
Now, just before it was lights out for Tariq, Braden hit them with a trick from Kane's own playbook from Season 1 with the GTG, and Season 2 with Mecha. He cut the lights and entered all guns blazing. Braden was here to have his brother's back despite what he said earlier. He wasn't going to let Tariq go out on his own, and he also did hit Kane. Although I do think he hit Kane's gun because I did slow this down a few times, and Kane was firing back after. But Braden and Tariq did make it out of there alive, and Braden tells him Obi called him. He said he owed him for getting his family green cards, and I do think Obi's family from Nigeria could be an ally for Tariq in Season 4, because they've just started a fucking war.